What's up, everybody?
Hey,
Ben, how you doing this week?
great as always. How are you?
Very good. And listeners, we welcome you to Keep Pluggin podcast number 22.
22.
That's right. Our podcast is now just a young adult trying to get through college, figure out what it's doing with its life. Yeah, it's a beautiful time, man.
Part-time job at the movie theater.
Part-time job, but would have been just graduated college, trying to figure out what's going on, ferrying back and forth all over the state to see its girlfriend that it's not having a good time with. Well, I'm projecting like crazy.
This sounds a little too specific.
Little too specific. Anyway, terrible jokes about my past life aside, getting on topic, as we do every week, we're going to start off by taking a look back into the annals of gaming history. And then
Looking back.
We got a great one this week. What do we got?
The all-time favorite, Super Smash Bros. Brawl.
Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Interesting word choice. All-time favorite.
And this was released in Europe. It's another Fudge anniversary. June 27th, 2008.
What can I say? We consider ourselves men of the world, Ben.
Yeah.
So
it was January in America.
January in America, so we missed it. But you know what? Honestly, we only started the podcast in February, so if anything, even more reason for us to take up this opportunity, right?
Exactly.
And I know we previously have discussed the first game of the series on this podcast. I think we did something similar where we talked about a European release or a Japanese release.
It might have been similar, yeah.
Might have been similar.
But it's cool. I think we did expand on the series too, I think that time. It's worth focusing in on this one, though, especially for me. This was the one that got me into the series. Melee, I played, but same for you?
Same here, yeah. I think it's interesting, too, because I think most people our age, so people like born around like 93 to 95, 96 or so, I played the first game with my friend John a lot. I played the second game with him, too. I didn't own... The Wii was my first Nintendo console that I owned, though, so for me, it was the first game that got me really in deep.
Wii was like my first own like real console, that and PS2, but I didn't really have a GameCube.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like with our generation, there are some people that I know got in on Melee specifically. It's this one in Melee, it seems like. Some people were in on Super Smash Brothers. The people who had like N64s when they were like really young, but even then, you know, like it was more of just like a fun little party game. I feel like Brawl marked the point for a lot of us when it became like this serious kind of fighting game that we would all play with our friends and like...
Yeah, this was probably one of the first games that I put in like more than 100 hours, even though it was multiplayer with friends and everything. But yeah, you get a lot more out of multiplayer games, but still it was one of the first times I really like went that ham on a game.
Same here for me. It was the first time I really ever, with some exceptions, like the Tekken games, I put a lot of time into those games growing up. I'm somewhat of a fighting game person. Again, I'm kind of in between you and like someone like Aaron, who we had on as a guest a couple weeks back, who is a very big fighting game fan and has been his whole life. I like certain fighting games. I get into certain styles, but this was my first experience, one of my first experience getting really in depth with a fighting game, and it was my first experience ever doing that with Brawl. And the interesting thing is that kind of by and large, I think Brawl is kind of considered the odd duck of the series in a lot of ways. Like it has the very weird in-depth story mode, the Subspace Emissary,
which was cool to try. I never really played that mode, but I think most people didn't really play that mode, or why they didn't go back to it, and it probably took a lot of work.
Yeah,
but it was cool. I think just the very floaty mechanics don't translate to like an adventure platformer that well.
Yeah, it was an interesting attempt because I mean they had already kind of done some stuff like that. Like Melee had a story mode that kind of had some like little levels like that were kind of similar. I think even the original game did like these kind of platformy levels. That's always been a part of the series, but never really like the main focus. Yeah. And
that's another one we were talking about, like movie cuts of games. I think Subspace Emissary is a good one because the cutscenes are really the prize for that.
They are. There's something really interesting. It's like a very weird, like kind of hard to pan out but kind of interesting story. Like I feel like there's a lot of
it's the most fan service crossover thing ever.
Oh, it's the most fan service crossover thing ever, but it's also like has a lot of weird lore about it, and it does a lot with like the whole idea of like what is it, like the master hands, and the idea that they're like serving that have like there's some crazy theories out there about like what it all means. Like have you dived into any of that at all?
Not really. But I remember Sakurai saying when they were making Smash 4 that another reason they did away with that kind of mode is that they knew the cutscenes would be on YouTube the next day, so they were just like, why are we going to spend all this time to make this game have amazing cutscenes when you don't have to play the game to watch them?
That is at once like a very interesting and valid reason, and a very like disappointing excuse for not giving a game a story.
It's kind of like a high and mighty thing too. He's like, oh well, you're just gonna watch them online. Why should I do it anyway?
Yeah, it's like, oh well, why ever give a game a story if people are gonna cut it and make content out of it?
Yeah, like, Sakurai is one of those crazy geniuses though, so you can't blame him.
He is, and I mean his games speak for it. Even Brawl, which again, some people, there's other reasons I think, and again we've touched on this, why Brawl is kind of considered by the Smash, specifically the Smash esports community, maybe kind of the odd duck out. It has more to do with like the iframes and stuff like that, right? Like certain moves were changed.
Well, I know one of the main reasons the actual fighting scene hates that game is that before, like, Smash 4, they embraced the fighting scene and they really tried to get that market going with it.
Yeah.
And I think that worked out relatively well for them, but in Brawl, there was this weird mechanic where every so often, randomly, your character would trip. Like, you would literally just fall over on your face. And, it's like if you hit the banana peel item, that would happen to you randomly without the banana peel, and you just fall over, and that little random thing could completely screw over a professional fighting match or anything. If you have money on that, or however they do it, that's just horrible. And a lot of people think that they put that in there to make it more of a party game, but it's also one of those things again where they feel slighted, that community, where it's like, oh well, I want it to be a party game for family and friends, so there's going to be this little random thing that won't let it be that full fighting community game.
There's something really interesting in that story that kind of, I think, goes back to what we were talking about last week with how this generation, Nintendo seems to be kind of embracing that community a lot more with how they're treating things with Splatoon. Even with Splatoon 1, they just recently they hosted an invitational. They've done the Nintendo World Championships a couple times. Like, it's weird. They have a very on again, off again relationship with that community, because they've been doing events since, like, even in like the 90s, they did like events for Mario Kart and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But then, like, it seems like they kind of, again, I think I was bringing this up last week, but Polygon had a really interesting write-up about all this. It seems like they're kind of hit or miss on it, and I mean, it's an interesting idea, like something about the idea that, oh, you even if you're the best player, like there's this equalizing force that like gives everyone an opportunity.
It's
like,
the equalizing force. Competitive people don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. You want to just be able to do what you want, and it's a very non-esports friendly move.
Yeah. I
mean, I could see it potentially being an intriguing move within an esport, but I can also see that community in particular just being like, you know how they are in particular too. Like, everything needs to work a certain way because, again, it's a high level, high risk, high reward competition. It's understandable, but I also feel like there's ways you could work within that limitation that could be really interesting and intriguing if they had embraced that,
Yeah, and another aspect where they did listen to the fans was bringing Sonic into the game.
Right.
And honestly, Brawl was where it got really crazy with the characters because they added Snake and Sonic.
Do you remember that trailer?
The reveal with the cardboard box?
Yes.
Classic, yeah.
Solid Snake, though.
Yeah, those are two, like, amazing characters to get in that ensemble. But yeah, the Sonic specifically was due to fan outcry where I think they showed it at, was it E3? Or they had shown the game, right?
No, it was never officially shown. It was EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly. You know how now, like, all, like, the gaming sites do, like IGN does, like, their, like, yearly April Fool's joke? Mm-hmm. Or whatever, like, that's, like, a big thing, and, like, all these gaming sites and developers do it. That was a big thing in the early 2000s and the 90s that, like, a bunch of the game publications, like EGM, started. So they ran something where it was, like, I think it was either before Melee came out or it was, like, afterwards. Like, it was either before the game came out, they were like exclusive reveal, Sonic will be in the game, or it was like afterwards, director cut coming out with Sonic included. Like, and
it was like
the
gold ocarina cart where they one of the magazines made the
Exactly.
advertisement,
Exactly.
and then they were like, we have to make gold ocarina carts now because it's been in the ad.
Exactly. And I remember I was subscribed to Electronic Gaming Monthly EGM for a long time. I have somewhere, I might even still have it. When it was announced that Sonic was going to be in Brawl, they did a follow-up interview where they were like, yeah, we're sorry about that. And like they talked with Sakurai about like that and how like he to that day in 2008 up until like a couple months before the reveal. So keep in mind, we're talking from like 2002 when they did this joke. For 6 years, he got mail about how, when are you bringing Sonic to the game? Are you going to have Sonic in the next game?
And it actually delayed Brawl.
Yeah, it did.
He delayed Brawl to put Sonic in. And that's why a lot of his moves in the game are kind of weird and choppy. And it fits his character, but I think there was definitely less development time on that character.
Yeah, you can tell he's a little bit less polished. Than even Snake is like a really good character in that game. I actually love Snake in that game.
Oh, Snake is super polished. That one's really fun.
Snake is fantastic.
But yeah, in terms of characters and ones that weren't in the... I watched a video today on YouTube where it was like the way Sakurai works, and he has a complete idea for the entire game and how it's going to be exactly. So basically the only differences will be like clone characters. If they have extra development time, they'll do like a Ganondorf to your Captain Falcon or like a Dark Pit to your Pit.
Because certain characters are kind of like reskins or retools of each
other. And like people get mad about Dark Pit. It's like, why he doesn't deserve a spot. Well, they just gave a couple extra moves to him and reskinned Pit. It's not like taking up a spot. But ones that they cut from Brawl were the Mii characters and Pac-Man, which showed up next time. And that is actually a theme throughout the series. Like Bowser and King Dedede were going to be in earlier games, and they had to wait a bit.
In the first game, right? Because
I think
Bowser was in the second.
Bowser was going to be in the first one and was in the second, and I think Dedede was going to be in Melee but was in Brawl.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that.
And there's a few other ones like that. It's kind of interesting how they just... Sometimes it doesn't work out, but he really likes this certain character, especially Dedede is his character.
Yeah.
So I don't think Dedede is very deserving, but...
he would probably disagree with that.
He would probably disagree.
But like, there's something cool about the fact that he always kind of comes back around to it. He always recycles an idea if he's really passionate about it. Like, I appreciate that when developers always come back to an idea, and I think that this is going to kind of play into some conversations we have a bit later. But I like the idea of coming back to older content and finding a way to retool it, but only when it feels natural, you know?
Yeah, or the opposite, like Ice Climbers got cut,
right?
Because of, or I guess that's not the opposite, because that's kind of like, even though they were in Melee. And also Brawl, right?
Yes, they were in Melee and Brawl.
It's that same thing where they wanted Bowser to be in the first one, but just couldn't quite make it happen. So,
well, there was a reason related to the 3DS, right? Why they couldn't do Ice Climbers, right? Specifically.
Yeah, it was a technical issue, just because the 3DS couldn't handle that many, like, because it's something to do with like you have to assume the most, right? So you have like Rosalina and Luma. That's kind of two characters on screen at once, and then. I would assume the Wii U could have handled 8-player Smash with all Ice Climbers, which might be the most taxing, you know?
Yeah.
3DS didn't have 8-player mode, but I guess it couldn't handle 8 players because it was 4.
Yeah.
And then Ice Climbers is 2.
So it probably couldn't handle 4 people being Ice Climbers at once.
Yeah.
That would make sense. I think it was something like that. You're right. I know specifically that something about the 2 characters at once thing that threw them off of the game.
But, here's hoping for Smash Deluxe with Ice Climbers.
Fingers crossed.
Not that I really care about that character that much, but it'd be cool to round out the entire thing.
I don't know. I think, just to wrap up, in general, it seems like Smash 4, Brawl's a fantastic game. I will always love it. I do have to recognize, especially from an esports point of view, some of its faults. Like the tripping thing, it is a bit annoying in practice. It was an interesting idea, but... It's a fun thing.
It's a Nintendo kind of thing.
It's a Nintendo kind of thing, and it's still a great game. I think it unduly gets a bit of shit, but I'll say 4, particularly on the Wii U, is a near perfect game. The only thing looking back on it that I do feel like, as I love the fact that they did a 2-pronged release with the 3DS version, but I do feel like in some ways it kind of held back that Wii U version. So I'm interested to see if they do a deluxe for Switch, like just totally unbounded from like the having to have all characters on both systems, which was kind of stupid in the first place. I think there's nothing wrong with the idea of some each system having exclusive characters and stuff. Even
maybe
like you could.
That's another one of their just like design philosophies. They decided it had to be matching characters, and that was just how development went.
Again, that's something I like about them, though. In particular, Sakurai's that way. He's very rigid and disciplined, and and it's led to some of the best games, literally some of the best games in all of Nintendo's overall. So there we go.
Yeah, actually, one more tidbit I have is like during development, you would use like these little like figurine.
Right, you were mentioning this to me pre-show.
Like just it looked like metal. I saw pictures of it, and it was just like a totally bland action figure, like human figure, and he would put every action pose of every move in these little figurines. That's cool. And that's how they would get the silhouettes down, like instead of drawing it out, I guess. But it just shows how much dedication this guy has, and he would like probably sit at home and just pose these figures for hours and hours just to think of moves and like translate it and portray it to his artists. And he puts a lot of work into this, and we thank him for Smash. Thank you, Sakurai.
Thank you, Sakurai-san. Thank you, sir. I love them. Great games. But on the subject of games we love, Ben, or games that we've been playing, what have you been playing this week?
I've been playing a little indie game called Ali Ali.
Now, I've heard about this game. I know like nothing about it though, so please take me through it.
Actually, I forget the developer. I wish I could shout them out, but I forget. It's I have it on 3DS and Wii U, but I played it mostly on 3DS. It was through the Nintendo Humble Bundle I got, which was pretty cool. They should do that again, honestly. That'd be cool.
I didn't even know.
Switch and...
Was it just a Switch? Was it a Switch bundle?
No, this was like a year or so ago.
Oh, okay.
I got a Wii U 3DS Nintendo Humble Bundle.
Yeah.
It was like $10 for like 10 games or whatever. But Ali Ali stood out the most to me in terms of the indie ones, and it's a skateboarding game. It's kind of like if you think Bit Trip Runner. It's like an endless border, I'd say. Skateboarding runner game. And like the levels end, it's not infinite, so that's why I would say it's like Bit Trip Runner, where it's actual levels and they have it's not randomized or anything.
So it's like A to Z based. Like you have to go from it's get to the end of the level basically.
It's get to the end of the level, but you're always moving. So it's just because you're on a skateboard. It's instead of a runner, it's a border. The mechanics are, I want to say, easy to learn, hard to master, because that's the the quotation about a good game, where it's easy to pick up, but it's actually a little frustrating to learn, because you have to learn to press A right before you land on the ground every time. And if you're grinding, you have to be pushing a direction on the stick before you hit the railing to be grinding. So it's a little bit of these like technical things you have to learn, which it works with it as like a skateboarding thing. I don't really feel like I'm skateboarding, but it's really fun to just like every movement of the stick pulls off a different move, and grinding is really fun. So it's just like it turns into this really cool like finger dance of like moving the stick around.
So do you have to like do kick flips, or is it all grabs? Like, because it almost reminds me of the skate video games.
Yeah, I was gonna compare it to that actually. It's you got a move list, and there's different, like you could do like up and then half circle, up quarter circle, and then there's only the A button. There's just a lot of different stick combinations you can do tricks, and also grinding and just tricks off the ground are different, so it's contextual as well.
Okay, so there's a bit of like you can only do certain moves when you're going off the ground, or certain moves when you're like coming out of a grind per se.
Yeah, so just in a level there'll be a railing.
Okay.
And sometimes like the railing could be over like a death pit, so you'd have to grind. But sometimes it's a choice, like you can grind or just skate past the railing. I prefer to grind just because it's kind of more fun. You get that satisfying noise when you hit the railing.
Is it point based too? Like you get points for everything you do, like a Tony Hawk game?
Yeah. And there's also like different like achievements. Each level it'll be like do the whole level only grinding, or do the level without grinding. Just certain conditions that you'd have to follow. Like a lot of games have that kind of thing, but yeah, it's just a cool little game. It's cool to kill a few minutes, and it's got a good soundtrack too.
I love skateboarding games. I always have. I was a big Tony Hawk fan. I loved the skate games, particularly for the whole meat mode, just because I loved like the dumb party mode aspect of it. But this is really interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. The only thing I have to add of this is that it's just a really dumb thing. But there's a game called Ollie Ollie, the name of this game, right?
Yeah.
There's another indie game that came out last year that's called Oxenfree, right?
Really? Wow.
So I'm just saying, there's an indie bundle idea there that's going untouched, guys.
That's
the Ollie Ollie Oxenfree bundle. I mean, come on.
Bring it to me.
Different game developers. I'm sorry, I don't have your names in front of me. You can have the idea for free. Just give me a mention. Just give me a thanks. I'm just saying, make it happen, Steam. Do you have anything else to talk about, though, on Ollie Ollie, Ben?
No, I recommend it. It's a fun little game. And, like I said, you get into the grooves, like finger dancing grooves, and you can freestyle. Like, you don't have to know the moves. You can kind of just freestyle stick movements.
It's not super rigid. Like, you don't have to do certain moves at certain times.
Yeah, like you could just hit the railing into a grind, and then I usually just do, like, a full circle, like, move. Like, I'm never, like, thinking I'm going to do, like, an ollie. I'm just flicking the stick around, and it's fun.
All right. Well, there we go. I'm definitely going to check that out. Do you know if it's available for anything other than Nintendo consoles?
Not sure. It's on Wii U and 3DS as far as I know.
I'll do some research and I'll find out about that myself then. But on that note, I guess we're going to toss it over to me.
Yeah, what about you?
I've been playing a couple different things. So first off, just to go down the list, mostly this week it's gonna be updates on things I've already kind of talked about in the past. So numero uno, the biggest one, Wolfenstein. Oh my god, I did it again. It's Wolfenstein, right? We went over this last week.
It's Wolfenstein, yeah.
Okay. So Wolfenstein, The New Order, which is an amazing game. I've really been enjoying it, Ben. I don't know if it's up your alley. You're not the biggest shooting fan, but I actually think you would really. This is another case where I think you would really enjoy this game's story, and maybe even as like a movie, because it's a really interesting alternate history take. Do you know the game's premise at all?
Not really.
So just to go through it, it's basically it takes place in an alternate history where the Nazis won the war, and you're like a American soldier. It kind of has fun with the idea that, like, obviously Wolfenstein is a very old game series, and it's always been about you being this guy that's killing Nazis. You're like literally like Lieutenant Aldo Rain from like Inglourious Bastards, more or less. You're just this like, or at least in the past games, you've always been kind of depicted as this very one-dimensional or like bland character. And the game kind of has fun with that because they actually make your character, B.J. Blazkowicz, like this very interesting character. He's like very jaded and like very like shell-shocked from the war, and he has these like dreams about like he's like he has this dream where he's like sleeping and like his wife's barbecuing and his kids are playing, and he's like, that life will never be for me. He's like very introspective and like existentialist, and it's really, he like quotes poetry in his head and stuff. He's like a weird, interesting kind of character, and it's almost like if they like made Master Chief like a really like tortured and like well-developed character. Like it, but it also kind of has fun with it because he's also, while he's doing these things, like murdering a bunch of Nazis in horrific ways. Obviously, I mean, even within that, I mean, part of the reasons why Nazis have become such an interesting, not an interesting, but such a well-established villain in games media is because they're very universally, like, able to be hated.
Yeah. I
mean, there's not too much, like, they're just evil. I think that's why they were, especially in the early years of games, such a prevalent threat, because it was very easy to just justify that antagonism. This game has fun with that too, where like it doesn't shy away from it. Like there is a scene where you go into like a concentration camp, but it's like a high tech, because the whole idea too is that they have this advanced technology. So there's like robots and stuff, but it's a little silly, but it's also not as silly as you think it would be. Like it's hard to explain it, but on paper, like it shouldn't work as well as it does, but it just does. And it's really an example of like strong direction and writing and cinematography. Because again, there's like some very well choreographed and well, photographed, not just cutscenes, but even in-game moments that really kind of, it does something kind of like what Half-Life 2 does, where it guides you, like there's certain parts that are in game, but like a character will be off somewhere talking, so you'll naturally like be the cameraman yourself. It does a lot of stuff like that. Like, it actually reminds me a lot of Half-Life 2 in a lot of ways. I'm really enjoying it. It's not the longest game. I'm probably about halfway done with it. I think I might try to plug through and beat the whole thing, especially because you know me, I'm always the kind of guy that like leaves the game half unfinished. I think I might just plug through this. Unfortunately, though, not unfortunately, but I have started to get back on the ball with my other commitment. So, as we even brought him up before, Aaron, who's been a guest in this podcast, lent me his copy of Bloodborne. I've had it for about 9 months. There was about a 3-month period when I first got Breath of the Wild that I was not playing the game at all, so I've been trying to get back on it. I finally beat a boss that had me stuck before Breath of the Wild. I'm now trying to figure out where I go next, and I mean, I've had the game for almost a year now. Like, he's getting a little antsy. To be fair, Dan Roach has had games of mine for years, like literal years. So, but I've also had some of his games for literal years though. So, either way, I'm trying to get back on the ball with that. I've only played a little bit of that, and the third thing, Psychonauts. I've been playing a bit of that still, just because I did enjoy the experience, even though playing it the way we were playing it and in Game Club felt a little bit. It started to feel a bit like a chore. I've actually been enjoying freely playing it in my free time, and I would love to let you take a shot at that, just because, again, I know your main complaint with that was the controls. So I would like to know what you think about playing the game on a system that actually has the controls mapped to it still.
Yeah, I'd still be down to try that.
We should definitely make that happen one of these days, but otherwise that's it for me.
Yeah.
Ben, before we have a couple topics we want to touch on this week, but there's a very glaring, looking around this room, we've mentioned before, Ben has an amazing setup. He has almost wall-to-wall just posters and amiibos and all these different things here, except there's one big glaring hole in the wall, if you would, and that's Ben's substantial, literally the biggest collection of amiibo I think I know anyone has. All in the box is gone. So what the fuck, Ben?
Yeah. Well, bottom line is I just got tired of looking at the things. Not really, but I first of all, I have a business selling stuff, so it's easy for me to just decide to take a 180 and be like, this is part of my inventory now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff I collect is that, and it's like I like to hold on to it for a while.
Yeah.
And appreciate it for myself. And then one day it's just like, oh, you know what? I need some extra cash. So now it's inventory. But yeah, today I took each one and I took count of them. I made a plan for selling them online. If you're interested, they'll be on eBay soon. And I already feel better, you know. It's also just the new Link amiibos came out the other day, the 30th anniversary ones, Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask. Right? Well, there was another one. There was 3, right?
Yes.
And I was very surprised with myself because I didn't care.
Well, you already got the cards of those ones, right? You bought those.
Well, yeah, I got
cards?
I wouldn't have opened them anyway, so yeah. I got the cards to get the game unlocks.
Yeah.
The amiibos were more of a collecting thing for me than ever was for in-game stuff. Yeah, I just was like, not only do I collect Link figures, but I collected amiibos pretty hard. And once the new ones came out, I was like, I don't really have any desire for these. And that's when I knew I was like kind of over this.
So you just kind of, there's like no one big thing. It just kind of happened?
Yeah, it just kind of happened. And I just felt I needed to move on. It's like, it's a lot of toys. I'm keeping a few of my favorites. And, not to disparage anyone if they're collecting amiibo. Like, I've been on the other side of it for sure, where people are like, why do you care about those pieces of plastic? I wouldn't put anyone down for that.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
And
I still have a shitload of shit.
Shitload of shit. And then also, like, again, it's everyone's lives, like, if something makes you happy, do you, like, don't, no judgment here from either side,
Yeah. And like I said, half jokingly at the start, I somewhat did just, kind of get tired of looking at them.
I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful setup.
It looked great, but you don't live in this room.
That's true.
So just having this clear wall, I feel fresh, I feel new, and I feel good. New things are to come.
I get that, because, I mean, even my room at home right now feels very cluttered, and every 6 months or so, I like to rearrange my room or update some things, get rid of some things. It's always nice. Like, I remember 6 months ago I got new bed sheets. I did just like not to compare that to this necessarily as a one-to-one.
I think that's honestly comparable.
Okay. Well,
like I wouldn't okay, maybe it's not the best comparison, but
because
I think
this is a bigger investment. Obviously.
Bigger investment, more space, but in theory it's like it's just a refreshment of your life.
It is. The one thing I would say is that, again, that was a big time and money commitment on your end.
I had a great time collecting them. I remember the way I got each one. I'm going to put them on eBay, and I'll probably take nice pictures of each one for the listing and save the picture and be like, that's that one. And I'm sentimental like that. Like, I'm not just going to chuck them out the door and get rid of them. So
yeah, this isn't just like a spring cleaning thing where you're just like getting rid of everything. Like, you are going to be...
I've been thinking about it for a while. It's pretty much a full Smash Bros. Collection of Amiibo, plus some others like Splatoon and Woolly Yoshi and Shovel Knight thrown in there. But sans a few like Meta Knight and the new ones that are coming out. Mm-hmm. It's basically a full Smash collection. And just time to move on for me.
So how many do you think you're going to keep, and which ones do you think you're going to keep?
The ones hanging over there, that's what I'm keeping. Rosalina is my favorite, and a few of the Zelda ones that I just got recently, I'm going to keep around for a bit more.
That's nice, and you know what? It's a nice collection, and you know what? I got to give you a lot of respect. It's hard sometimes, especially when you collect something like that for so long. Like, it can be kind of difficult to give that up, and I know that too, just because of my own life.
It's hard to part with it, and
it is.
A lot of collections like that it's to fill a need inside somewhere, and it's like it does become kind of emotional, and it's interesting how the brain works in that way, and it becomes like a habit, or it's for a while I was equating it to drugs, like not that it's that unhealthy, but I'd be with my friends and be like, yo, I need the Charizard, yo. Gotta get the Charizard.
Well, I know, particularly with you and Dan Roach, it became like you guys always were on those new ones, always scouring Target. Like, we even talked about this just last week. Like, you guys were and it's interesting. I was on the other side where I feel like I was very dismissive of that at first. Like, I remember there was a lot of times I'd be with you guys, and you and Roach would be like, "Oh, we're going through the Target," and I would just kind of be like sitting there rolling my eyes on my phone, like, these guys and their fucking toys. Like, and it's funny now because I didn't have a Wii U or I had a 3DS, but I didn't have a new 3DS. So for the longest time, I had no real in-game incentive to buy Amiibos. I feel like I'm kind of starting my Amiibo. I don't know how many Amiibos I'm going to get, but I do feel like I would like to, maybe not as big of a collection as you had on your one wall behind your television, but like the one you have right now. Like, I would maybe like one of that size or somewhere in the between. They are really cool collectibles, and I like that you're not just throwing the whole thing out, because I infamously did this with. Maybe infamously more to my group of friends. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on podcasts, but I sold all my PlayStation 2 games at one point while I was in college, and that has been probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my gaming life.
Yeah. Man. Well, I wouldn't sell I still love having a game library.
Yeah.
I think I'm just kind of starting to purge the things that don't actually matter, and just for looking at, I don't need as much.
And I mean, that's exactly it. Really, more or less. There are cool incentives, especially on certain Amiibos.
Yeah, and also I see myself, like, I got the cards to unlock the Breath of the Wild costumes.
Yeah.
And, sorry Nintendo, but I see a future where if I really want an in-game item, I'm going to buy an NFC tag online and not an Amiibo.
See, I think that's probably more of what I'm going to do too. Like, the ones, like, there's some that are really beautiful and really cool. Like, I really want
as far as figurines, yeah.
As far as remember, I don't know, do you remember there was like that Japanese exclusive Chibi Robo one that was like die-cast metal and stuff?
Well, I have Chibi Robo right there. That one.
Oh, you have that one?
That was in America. It came with the game.
That came with. Wait, they re-released Chibi Robo in America?
It was a new 3DS game.
Wait, there's a second game for 3DS? Holy shit!
There's several games in that series, and the 3DS one came with an amiibo.
I know there was a couple sequels, but I thought they were all Japanese only. Holy shit, dude.
No, that was a thing. It actually it didn't sell well, and I got the game with the amiibo for like $20.
Oh, damn. Well, I can, yeah, Chibi Robo has never been like a giant. They're fun games. They're very weird, but...
No, actually, the 3DS one was, it was like a... Oh, there was like a thing with the fans wanted Chibi Robo, and then they made this weird platformer that wasn't that great with the character. And then the developer said in the interview, they were like, if you don't buy this game, it might be done for Chibi Robo as a series.
I hate when
and
they do
people
that.
were like, what the hell? Like, you made a subpar game, and now you're like threatening us to buy it?
See, that it's funny because a lot of people thought that was kind of what was happening with the Metroid series, because I did that one game, Federation Force. And then after that, a lot of people assumed like it was going to be a similar thing where like the series was done, like that might be like the final nail in the coffin. Even though that's like a weird thing.
There's a teaser at the end of Federation Force that prompts Prime 4.
Is there really?
Yeah,
I didn't even know that about that game.
And there, like before Prime 4 was officially announced, people were like, "Yo, there's like this teaser." It was like a Marvel movie teaser, you know, where Samuel L. Jackson comes through and he's like, "Iron Man 3." You know, like
that's exactly what he
like,
said. yes, Ben. That is what I at the end of the original Iron Man in 2008. But fucking Samuel.
You know what I mean, though. Like, there's a teaser after the credits that it totally sets up Prime 4 with one of the main antagonists. Sorry, I always mix that up. And but nobody wanted to listen to that clue. That big clue.
Well, I think a lot of people just didn't play Federation Force. That's really interesting. I didn't even know that.
I mean, I didn't play it either, but I saw that online. I was like, oh, that's blatant.
That's fucking cool. I didn't even. We should check that out after we finish up. I really want to see that. But either way, I think a lot of people felt maybe if even people knew that, maybe they thought that Federation Force didn't sell well enough, so the series would be done. You know. But
yeah. It also had Prime in the name. Like, they're doing the franchise a service with just naming it that.
Yeah, but they also made like a very odd game that wasn't what the fans wanted, similar to what they did with poor Chibi over here.
True.
I've never noticed that one before, which just goes to show how many you used to have.
That's one of the open ones I'm keeping because it's like my mascot for Keep Pluggin, because he's got the plug on his head, so I like keeping that one around.
Oh, we should turn that into a logo. Damn.
It's been a logo. It was the brochure for my last video game event.
Oh, was it?
Convention.
That's really cool. That's cool though. Chibi Robo for the GameCube is a cool game. It's a weird, interesting, kind of very different game. It's like another example though of maybe, or Chibi Robo the Amiibo getting maybe a bit more back on subject instead. That's like an example of something that's really cool. I didn't even know that. I thought that was like a Japanese exclusive thing. Maybe there's another one I'm thinking of that is Japanese exclusive, or maybe the person that I heard that from might have just been talking out of their ass, but...
I think the person you heard that from was talking out of their ass.
Well, either way, it's beautiful, and I love that you're holding on to stuff like that, because I really don't think you should give away all of them, but
yeah, it's
also, this isn't like me selling my PlayStation 2 library, you know, these are things that aren't as important to the games. In some cases, like Breath of the Wild, they give you cool things, but more often than not, it's not something that's super essential.
Yeah, and I think I got carried away, you know, with the unessential, and I still love video games, and I want to get back to that core thing and just have not as much as this ephemera cluttering my life.
I think that's a smart decision. I mean, because now, do you think you'll ever buy another Amiibo again if like it really fancies your interest?
I think, yeah, it's a possibility. I'm not going to rule that out, especially if I do get rid of all, you know, it's 60 some odd figurine packs. So, you know, at that point I'll have room. And, you know, it's hard to say at the moment. I'll see how I feel, but the Breath of the Wild keeps coming through with some enticing shit, so...
They do.
I don't know. If the champions, I'll be able to resist those. I was able to resist the 30th anniversary links, but if the champion... You know, the 4 champions that they announced with the DLC second pack... If those do some really cool stuff, I don't know. I might...
It's going to be hard.
Although, I'll just buy the cards, like I said. Anyway.
All right, for me, it's going to be the Super Mario Odyssey wedding ones. Those ones are going to get me hook, line, and sinker.
Can't wait.
I think I am gonna probably do a similar thing where if I buy them, it's only gonna be for games that I want. I would maybe argue you could hold on to a couple more, maybe some of those Smash Brother ones, dude. But if you're very adamant about getting rid of the clutter, I'm also not gonna stop you.
I've already decided.
All right. So on that note, I'm not gonna try to convince you any longer. But I am gonna move on to some other topics because we have something very important we have to discuss in the world of Nintendo specifically. This week.
The much rumored, much speculated, blatantly was always happening, classics line, continuation, hardware of a mini that is classic.
The SNES Mini is happening.
Yes, that's what I was getting to. I didn't read the box fully because the way they name things is always so convoluted.
I think it's Nintendo Classic Edition Mini SNES or something like that.
Oh my god, I have to read it again later, but like because the NES Mini Classic or Classic Mini.
It was like Nintendo Entertainment System 30th Anniversary Edition Mini NES or something. 30th
Anniversary.
It was an anniversary edition. That one was, right?
It wasn't called that though.
I think at least somewhere on there was something about a 30th anniversary. Maybe that wasn't part of the name.
30. Maybe you're thinking of 30 games in one.
Maybe 30 games in one. It was.
Anyway,
it was an anniversary edition though. Am I correct in that assumption? I'm pretty sure that one was.
It was around 30 years for the NES.
Was that one
not? I
not?
don't know if they named it that.
Was that one not an anniversary edition? I could have sworn it was. Okay, maybe I'm wrong on that, but
I don't think so. But whatever the name is, I'll probably call it SNES Mini.
I think most people are already just calling it the SNES Mini, or the SNES Mini. Like
that was on purpose actually. My brother hates when people say SNES.
Yeah, does he?
Yeah, but Super Nintendo Classic is what I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably call it SNES Mini or Super Nintendo Classic. No matter what you want to call it. It's a really cool prospect.
Yes.
And I think
let's get into it.
Yes, let's get into it because I think there's a lot of discuss here, particularly in relation to the NES Mini, which, again, I'm looking at it right now.
Is it hackable?
Is it hackable?
That's what I want to know.
Because, well, I know one of the things you and I talked about when you got your NES Mini was that I was upset because that was right around the time, literally, I think a day or two before Nintendo announced, yeah, we're cutting off production, we're ending it. So I was very upset. You were like, well, look on the bright side. They're probably going to do an SNES Mini. I really wasn't expecting this for another year or two. I thought they were going to wait until the anniversary of the SNES, but fuck it, there's money to be made, right? But I know that was one of the things you and I talked about was like, oh, well, if the SNES or the SNES Mini, to really put the thorn in your brother's side, comes out, I'm going to hack the shit out of that if I can.
Yeah, and to just to lay it out there, it's $80 apparently. Mm-hmm. That I didn't look that part up, but I've heard that enough times.
It is $80
to say, yeah. So $80, but this time around you get 2 controllers and only 21 games. Now we were saying the NES was $60, which was an amazing deal. That's basically, you could think of that as $2 a game because 30 games,
which is,
and then the hardware is just.
Yeah.
Like if you...
And that's roughly comparable to how much they are on the Virtual Console, correct?
Well, no, they're like $4.99 on the Virtual Console.
So if anything, it's less money than it would be to buy them on the Virtual Console.
And then you get the hardware on top of that.
Yes.
So the Super Nintendo is less of an amazing deal, but the games themselves are much higher value, much higher playtime, and much better games. They're all the... amazing sequels to all the games they started on the NES. You get A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Final Fantasy 3 was in there, Secret of Mana. It's like Super Nintendo is the home of some of the best games of all time. I'm not breaking any news by saying this.
Yeah.
Everyone knows
this is the classic system.
Dub of a system. It's only 21 games, but I was poring over the list last night.
Literally every game is a hit.
I was thinking, they have Kirby's Dream Course, which you could say kind of a dark pit situation where it's like, that doesn't deserve a slot if you only have 21 games. But it's like, it's fine to be on there. And I was really racking my brain, like, people want Chrono Trigger. That's an amazing game. And you can think of like hundreds of classic
because there's Nintendo so many games. Even more so than on the NES.
Even more so. And actually, I was saying with Dan last night that it was even kind of more like they had to put extra games on the NES to justify it.
Yeah.
Because those games, while some of them are also amazing
and very beefy and a lot of stuff
they went with more quantity because the games are slightly less quality comparatively.
Yeah. Because also back then too, I mean, games, it took a lot to develop games. Teams were smaller. Like a lot of those games are, there's a good amount of games on there that are like very in-depth, robust experiences, particularly, I mean, the Mario games and Zelda, but a lot of them too are very simple, kind of pick up and play, like party games and stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like, here, I'll play Balloon Fight for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not like Super Metroid. You get into it, it's like you can't stop yourself. Yoshi's Island. Oh,
yeah,
one of my favorite games ever. Yoshi's Island.
All these are robust experiences, like 10 to 20 hours minimum. Like in some cases, I mean, we have giant RPGs on here and stuff too.
Like Final Fantasy 3 is going to take at least like 50 hours to get through.
Also,
or
Super
even
Mario,
bite into.
Super Mario RPGs up in there too.
Oh, they got 7 stars up in there. Like I was saying, it's 21 games and not 30, but each one is such a classic hit. Like we glossed over it. Star Fox 2.
Well, we're saving the best for last.
While personally, I'm not the biggest Star Fox fan, and I did like the Wii U one. While that got a lot of
Wait,
hate.
really?
I know that's the oddball opinion.
Whoa. Okay, cool though. No,
but I'm just a Wii U fan.
Yes.
I enjoyed that game for what it was. Star Fox in general, I'm not a big fan of, but just conceptually, I really like that idea of putting this game they never released on that was basically completed, if not fully finished, and it's a really good hook for the system. And on top of that, for the $80, you get 2 controllers instead of 1.
I will say this, especially as someone who hasn't been shy about not blasting, but like taking Nintendo to task on pricey hardware decisions. I don't think this is that bad of a value proposition. I guess I'm a little bit bigger of a Star Fox fan than you are because I love Star Fox 64. The first Star Fox was in here too, we should say, which is also an amazing classic game. And I mean, that's it too. Again, like literally every classic game, pretty much every classic game, maybe give or take a Chrono Trigger, is accounted for in this list. Plus, they're all bigger experiences. Plus, you're getting Star Fox 2. Plus, you get a second controller. You don't have to sit around there and look for an extra $5 controller. So even if you want to tack that
and the actual cord length is 2 feet longer. Everyone complained about the shortness of the NES controller length.
So you also you don't need to spend $15 for the extender cables they were selling online too. Yeah. Or to get 2 of them. So if you think about the value proposition there, even let's say it would have been $5 to $10 on that extra controller already. Let's say that base price you're actually really paying for about $75 worth of content. Just in terms of that. Plus you're getting $75 base plus an extra $5.
Plus, if you think in terms of virtual console, like we were, the Super Nintendo games on Wii U are like $8.99.
Oh, are they? I was going to ask you how much they are.
Yeah, so they're like $8 instead of $4, and just considering that. Plus, if you think about it in the reverse way, if the NES Classic cost $80, would you scoff at that? Because now we have something to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
But if the first one came out at a higher price, I don't think it's that much more money. Like, I wouldn't have really scoffed at $80 for that. I thought $60 was an amazing deal.
$60 was an amazing. I do think, frankly, I think it's just hard because, again, it is 9 less games. Although someone pointed out that Kirby's Dream Land is in here, and then that game has like 8 different mini games inside of it or something like that.
Well, Kirby's Dream Course is the golf game.
Of course,
Kirby Superstar, which is on there.
Superstar, that's the one I'm thinking of.
That's a fudge though. Like it doesn't actually have 8 games in it. It's just different themes for one game.
That said, having a game in there like that does add a lot of variety and a lot of replay value.
And A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island. What else do you need?
I mean, those alone in terms of playtime are like well over 80 hours. If you want to go like what is it people saying, like $1 1 hour or something like that? Like if you want to go that route, you're easily getting over 80 hours of gameplay if you're playing even just like the 2 RPGs on this list.
And another tidbit I know is that it looks like, if you look at a picture of the console, it has the original like long rectangle ports for the controller, like the actual Super Nintendo controller ports. But the controllers still have the Wiimote nunchuck connector as the NES Classic did.
So where are they going?
So I assume it's by pressing the eject button, since there's no actual cartridge to eject. But there's this little plastic panel that flips down, and there's real ports under the fake ports that look like the original.
That is interesting.
And another thing I want to mention is that I always thought the European/Japanese design of the console looks way more sleek and cool. Plus, you get the colored, candy looking buttons, and the American one is more boxy, 90s looking, like it's purple themed. You know, some people got a purple fetish, which is cool, but
one of our best friends has a purple fetish, so
yes,
there you go.
and my brother. And
does he really?
It's I'm turning to look at my Super Nintendo.
It's a beautiful system.
It looks great, but you know, I always thought the Japanese one looked more sleek.
Oh, I love the Japanese European one. The Super Famicom is a beautiful design.
Yeah.
So I know we were talking about this a bit before. The one big thing I think we have to discuss before we move on to our next topic, the availability of the NES was at this point infamous. And again, we can talk for hours on length about how, was it a smart decision? Was it a silly decision? We know that these things don't cost a lot to produce. Again, people have ripped them open, and most of the parts are very simplistic circuit boards. Like, when I was in college, I took a electrical wiring, like, programming class, and a lot of those components look very similar to the stuff we use. Like, so there was this kind of forced unavailability, which was smart for Nintendo from a marketing perspective, because again, you have to keep in mind that the NES Mini, I think, more or less kind of served as a way to get people talking about Nintendo pre-Switch. And I think that's part of the reason of why they're doing it again this holiday season before the Switch comes out, or before the Switch's first. The Switch came out, obviously, before the Switch's first holiday, before Odyssey drops. It's a great way to drum up.
Yeah, it's 1 month. No, it was Odyssey. Yeah, it's like 1 month before Odyssey.
It's 1 month before Odyssey, and they're going to be selling them. I am willing to bet, though, they said they're going to have greater availability, but I was just listening to a report before we came in here and started recording that stocks are already getting kind of low. But do you think, I don't think as of right now you can pre-order in America, but you can in UK and Japan. Do you think you're going to try to score the UK version this time around, if you get it at all?
I mean, yeah, if I were to get one, I would try and go for the out of states one, just because I like the design better. Yeah, if I were to get one at all, it'd be for my convention to have for playing free play. And yeah, I honestly didn't really want the NES Classic. Like, I did actually, like, the weekend it dropped, I was like,
you were hype on it.
I was itching for it. But then, like, that Monday, I learned that you couldn't get it, and I kind of just let it go, you know? And then I luckily randomly got it, and I was like, I can't pass this up. So maybe a similar thing will happen where I just see it one day, and it's like, if you see it.
If you get both and I didn't get either one, I'm going to just kill myself. I'm just done. I don't know. I did want the NES. I think in part because, again, we've talked about this a lot. There's a lot of games on the NES that I never got a chance to play, and I would have loved the ability to just have an all-in-one box. And yeah, you know, value proposition. Maybe this isn't as great of a deal. I think just getting Star Fox 2 alone is fantastic.
Yeah, great hook. Like I said, it's cool for them to do that. Any game they got in the rafters, in the vault, that they could bring out is always great. Because
there's also that allure of, like, the game you never got to play, you know, and that's.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm definitely going to try to get one. And if I can, I think I'm going to just do what you did. And I'm going to just hack it if I can. Get everything on it. And then from there, like, if they do an N64 mini or whatever, I'm tapping out. Because I have an N64 already. Between you and eBay, I can get any game I want on it. I don't feel the need to go that far down the rabbit hole, you know?
Yeah.
But
I feel like if they keep going, it'll be N64, maybe GameCube if they go crazy. But the cartridge-based systems are probably going to happen.
I can't see them going all the way to GameCube at that point. I mean, also, when you get up to that, the data storage amount starts to get bigger. maybe they
3 games for GameCube. It'll be
like,
Sunshine, Melee, and Wind Waker.
That's the thing too. Like Nintendo put such a big value proposition on all their that's part of the reason of why we saw this bump. Like it's more money and you get less games, because that's also how Nintendo always operates, is that they like to have a certain value on every game, and that goes up as you get up higher in generation. I mean, even
the closer you get, especially if they're releasing each classic a year apart, it's going to expedite the like actual correlation to the real system.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing too. I'm just realizing this. Part of the reason, I think that's part of the reason of why they're. First off, we haven't even talked about this. Nintendo released all that information about their online service, which, no, we did talk about this, because I remember I gave them kudos on air for like really listening to people and like updating their thing. But I'll say this too. I wonder if it makes sense that like an NES or SNES game for them is the least value proposition, so that's why they're willing to do these classic editions and make them part of that like Netflix for gaming service. But I wonder too if maybe that's a big part of why they delayed the service so they could do that this holiday season, and then maybe that's part of the reason why they're limiting it too, because then now you can get any game for a price. They want to incentivize people to buy the Switch, and then there's your NES Classic Edition right there, or your SNES, your SNES Classic Edition right there, you know?
Yeah, they're milking it.
Speaking of really fast though, the opposite of milking it, Star Fox 2 coming out just makes me want to really quickly touch on this, and this isn't really a topic I think we've ever really talked about, and as always we ended up going a bit on some other subjects, so I don't think we're going to talk about it for too long. But vaporware, specifically games that you don't ever think are going to come out and then just appear out of the ether. I mean, again, I'm a pretty big Star Fox fan, but not a giant one. I think more the allure of Star Fox 2 finally coming out, just the allure of that. I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to buy this even if they're not Star Fox fans.
Yeah, Star Fox 2 is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because they finished the game, and they were basically like, the 64 is coming out, we have this finished game, but we're just not going to release it because we don't want it to look bad comparatively, and they moved on to make a new Star Fox game.
Yeah, and it was killed for a very silly political business kind of decision. And a lot of people have decried it, although the game has also been available for years as a ROM. There's still something very cool about Nintendo officially releasing it.
Yeah. And it looks good for Mother 3 after that.
Exactly.
Even though that's just a American translation that they need to do.
Yeah, but even think about like Fire Emblem. Like there's so many different examples of vaporware, different localizations. Like there's such an allure to that. Like remember, I was just reading about this actually when we were doing our research for the Brawl section. I was reading up on Melee, and the only reason that Fire Emblem came to America post Melee is because people were freaking out. People loved Roy and Marth in that game so much that they wanted those games. And the whole reason Nintendo never brought them over was because they were concerned that it was too difficult for American audiences. Because us and our hot dogs were just too fucking stupid for these games.
Yeah. That and then the Lost Levels.
And the Lost Levels, although they brought that over eventually too.
Eventually.
Nintendo has a history of this, but in general too, Ben, I just kind of want to talk about like some of my favorite examples of this kind of thing. Either a game that doesn't get localized for America or a game that just never comes out, you know? And I don't know, for me, the biggest example will always be, I'm a giant Star Wars fan. I don't really talk about this too much on air, but there was a whole collection of games LucasArts was working on before Disney bought the property and then signed a deal with EA to do Star Wars games. In particular, Star Wars 1313, which was basically Uncharted Star Wars. But it looked amazing and wonderful, and of course it was too good for this world, because we're garbage people. Although apparently we're getting a game directed by Amy Hennig, who did the first 3 Uncharted games. It's basically going to be the same thing with a different protagonist. On top of that, what is it? The coolest one was there was supposed to be a Darth Maul game, where like you play as him, like post episode 1. Because like, you know, like they brought that character back in like the animated show, and like canonically he like survived episode 1 now. Did you ever
really?
hear that?
I didn't know.
Yeah, that's a real thing. He canonically survived. He was like found by like a bunch of junkers, and like they attached a robot back bottom half to his body.
Oh god.
He actually becomes an amazing character though, believe it or not. The Star Wars animated series are good. You should check them out. But those for me will always be that and the original version. There was a couple different versions of Battlefront 3 that never came out. And they were all incredible. And also for me, there was this game called Avalist, which was supposed to be a like Battlefront style game, but set in the Final Fantasy universe, particularly Final Fantasy 12, which is like my favorite Final Fantasy game. It's a very weird one. It's not considered like by any means like the most like, It's not the most celebrated game of the series. It's kind of an odd duck, like Brawl
I
almost.
played some of 12.
12 is an interesting duck. It's very weird because it has this MMORPG style. Like you don't. It's not like a turn-based battle system. Like you move around, but then your character.
Yeah, there's some real-time like battles. It's not. You don't go into a battle, do you?
No, you just literally find enemies and you just like start attacking them.
I remember it was a bit different.
It was a bit different. It was a beautiful game though, and they're actually doing a remaster this summer for PlayStation 4 called the Zodiac Age. I might pick it up just because again I played a bit of it, never finished it. It's always been one of those games that could even be a future game club actually. Wouldn't put it past us. We could do that. I don't know. It depends. Do you like Final Fantasy games? Would you be open to?
I'd be open to it.
We'll keep that in mind. But on that note, Ben, before we talk about Game Club, do you want to touch on any games that are near and dear to your heart that never came out?
Well, there's some that eventually came out, like the original Earthbound.
Mm-hmm.
And another Earthbound thing was Earthbound 64, which became Mother 3, but there is all these early assets of an actual Earthbound, like 64 3D models, and like there's a video of this like desert area and this crazy trailer, and Earthbound 64 might have been amazing, but it works really well as like a 2D sprite game, but that would have been pretty cool. And just actually the 64DD console overall, like that console is like in itself one of those lost things. And originally they were going to do Ocarina Master Quest just for that. And stuff like there's this whole program they made for like creating characters and using assets to like make funny images of yourself. It was kind of like early Me concepts, doing the Me characters where it would just be these cute little like avatars of yourself, and you can make them dance and sing, and that kind of turned into all the Wii mini games and stuff.
Which is just wild to me that they had that idea 2 generations before they ended up doing it.
And like a lot of this stuff that gets lost, it comes through in other ways, or like Star Fox 2 gets released somehow, and Earthbound for NES comes out as Earthbound on Wii U, and Nintendo is smart. Like it doesn't happen like a lot all the time with the Star Wars games and with every company, but I know Nintendo has these stuff in the vault, like I said, and it eventually comes to fruition, especially with fan responses and stuff like that.
Nintendo in general deserves a lot of credit, especially now with this. They might be doing some of the best jobs with bringing these things out of the shadows and out of the vaults. Although again, a lot of times when these projects get canned, they're for a good reason. It's still so awesome to see them find the light of day. The last question I want to ask you, we kind of touched on this a couple weeks back during the E3 talk, but Shadow of the Colossus, which is a PlayStation 2 game you have a lot of appreciation for. I know we were talking about the remaster. Do you want to see them do those extra Colossi when they do that game? Like how do you feel about cut content being added back to like a remaster of a game?
I'm not sure how I feel. I don't think I've ever seen it happen.
I can think of a couple examples, but none of them were really... It'd be hard without the original director. I know...
Is that happening in Shadow?
I don't think it is anymore, but I'm not 100% sure. Shuhei Yoshida, who's one of the heads of Sony, particularly I think he's the head, if not the head, he's very involved in Studio Japan, and he's been very involved. He was one of the people who... He's not just an executive for the company. He helped Ueda-san, who's Fumito Ueda, the guy who did the Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and last year's The Last Guardian. He helped Ueda-san with getting The Last Guardian out the door. They have a close relationship. If not, I'm not quite aware of the status of it, but I know he's overseeing the Shadow of the Colossus remaster, but Ueda-san isn't really working on the game, which would make sense because he left. He's with a new company called Gen Design now. Their logo wasn't on that trailer. Out of respect, I don't think they're going to touch that stuff. He basically said it's going to be the same content. It's just going to be better graphics and controls, which I think is fine, especially because that's such a complete feeling game,
I know Wind Waker, when they were remaking that in HD, a lot of the people said that they've always heard about development and they had like 2 or 3 cut dungeons from that game, and they're like, are those going to show up? And I think that actually the developers commented on that, like, those just became ideas and they just floated into other dungeons for other Zelda games. I'm sure they're like concepts that were retooled for Skyward Sword or, whatever. Like, I think developers, they have these ideas, and you could call it cut content, but if they're the kind of people that keep making games, I think ideas are valuable. So it might show up in other ways that you don't even realize in other games.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I'm willing to bet some of that was the case with that cut content from Shadow of the Colossus and Last Guardian, although, again, I need to
maybe
play through.
the Last Guardian animal companion is one of, maybe that was one of the Colossi.
I don't know if it was. I know that it's documented. Like, we know what they are. Like, there's a lot of, like, Ueda-san has talked about them openly. I don't know if they're going to put that back in the game. Maybe I would be open with them doing some kind of secret thing. Like, maybe one is, like, a piece of, like, hidden content. But I also respect that they don't want to step on Ueda-san's toes, especially when he's left Sony, and it seems like their relationship might be on a bit of a rocky point. But, hopefully, again, I've never played through Shadow Colossus in its entirety. I'm just gonna, I can't wait to buy that game next year. Speaking of things we can't wait for, but we have to, Ben, let's talk about Game Club real fast before we wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the status, Benny Boy? Walk me through it.
So the status is we're playing Metroid Prime Original, and
what do you think of it so far? Just real fast.
So far, I'm really enjoying it.
Me too.
Level design is super amazing, sexy level design.
Sexy as fuck.
Reminds me a bit of Half-Life, and it reminds me a bit of Zelda. Mostly Zelda. Metroid always has a lot of these parallels with Zelda. It works in a similar way.
So I have to ask you, because you're playing the Wii U version of Trilogy, do you have to play with the Wiimote, or are you playing with the you play with the gamepad?
I'm pretty sure you have to play with a Wiimote. It's a Wii game.
Okay.
But I think it works really well. Aiming, I thought the Wii was underpowered, so it was underutilized in those sorts of games. But I think it's a great system for first-person shooters. The Wiimote is great for just aiming at the screen and shooting. It's very intuitive.
I think I heard a lot of people say that they actually thought that the control scheme worked a lot better.
Yeah, it's really good, and yeah, I'm enjoying it on a Wii. I like it. You and me played a bit of it. That was basically to see how far we needed to get. So we're gonna say, get up to the Magmore Canyons, right?
Magmore
Cavern.
Tavern.
No, Magmore Caverns.
The Magmore Caverns.
Yes.
Magmore, Magma.
Just not to spoil anything, but it's basically like, to me, it felt like the first dungeon of the game, like to put it in Zelda terms. Beat the first main boss and get to the next area, which is the Fire Magmore Caverns. Which
I think is a good way to... It's hard because the game isn't maybe quite as segmented as Psychonauts or like a Zelda game would be, but that's part of the reason of why we wanted to do this week gap, so we could figure things out and kind of talk it out amongst ourselves before we send it to you guys off into the wild.
Yeah, instead of guessing, like just looking at a guide and guessing what to play up to next, and then we don't have to make that commitment. We can just play, see how far we get, and then tell you guys where to go up to, and then talk about it next week.
Exactly. We can kind of decide on the fly. And if one of us plays a little bit farther than the other, it's just one of us is a little bit ahead for the next week. And then you guys get just the very streamlined best version of it. On that note, we have a lot of content. We're dropping this. With it, we're going to be dropping a lot of information concurrently about Game Club, its future, what we're going to be doing. And like I said, we're going to be building that infrastructure. So specifically, do we kind of want to talk about some of what we're going to be doing, Ben?
A little bit. I'm going to be putting a Facebook group up for Keep Pluggin Game Club. Maybe we'll have some votes on there. Maybe we'll have some tallies. Maybe we'll have some likes. Maybe we'll have some follows. You know the drill.
Right. And in addition, I think we're also going to, especially for the first couple of weeks, run it on the Facebook page, the Twitter in general too. But we really do want to push the Facebook group as this very, it's going to be tied to the Keep Pluggin account, so you guys should be able to find it under there. But push it as a place for you guys to come together with us and kind of talk about the game and talk about your experiences. I think we're also going to we're going to firm up a specific hashtag on Twitter too. That's probably a good idea.
Hashtag Keep Pluggin Game Club.
Hashtag Keep Pluggin Game Club. There we go. So if you guys want to play along and give us your thoughts and notes, use the hashtag, and we will collect all of them and start showing them up on these episodes. But
Sounds good.
That's about all we have to report for this week, guys. Just keep playing along. I'm loving Metroid.
I'm actually really liking it.
Yeah.
Feels great. It's a solid as hell game.
So far, or you think we're feeling more towards? Obviously, it's a little early. Do you think we're gonna be feeling what was it?
Plug it.
You think you're gonna plug it so far?
I think I might.
All
Never
right.
played Metroid Prime. I actually have played a bit of 3, but I'm getting it more this time. I think it feels good.
From what I understand, those games actually have like a pretty in-depth storyline. I do think 3 might have been a hard one to jump into. So.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Well, I'm loving this one though. We'll have more in-depth thoughts next week, guys. On that note, Ben, does that wrap it up for this episode?
Yep.
All right, Ben, come here. Audience, as always, I'm shaking Ben's hand. Metaphysically, I'm shaking out. I'm shaking out. I'm reaching out and shaking everyone's hand too. Ben, where can we find you online?
At Keep Pluggin LI on Twitter, and Keep Pluggin everywhere else: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
All right, and you guys already know what it is with me. You can find me on Twitter at Hi There Big Fella. You can find me on Instagram as _sans_man. You can find me on Snapchat, rather, as sans_man. And that'll wrap it up for this week, guys. We love you. Be happy. Be safe. Keep plugging.
Keep plugging.
Oh, happy 4th of July.